Just reading an article by the RAC. This gradually, then suddenly. And I think this is playing out in our general practices as well. That over the last 2, 3, 5, even 20 years, that as funding has been extracted out of general practice, that doctors have been quite resourceful in still making it work. Basically, they're doing more work for free or more work for less money, or utilizing the system to say, okay, they want us to do this, this, and this. We'll do those things more consistently, which has been fine. But now we're at a place where you look at the cost of living, the inflation, the amount of money that it takes to actually run a practice, and it is getting very difficult. So we are likely to see a lot more closures come through. And yes, the survey was informal, i.e. there could have been a number of people who responded who are in strain, who are struggling, and there's a big chunk that did not reply because it's not focused, it's not their focus. But it's still concerning. Even to say, hey, 300 doctors to say, yeah, we are thinking about closing. We're going to see this happen, and the solution of the government is to bring in more overseas trained doctors, but realize that they still have to be trained up. And one of the interesting things in this article was it's saying that, hey, we basically need 5 full-time GP equivalents in order to run this business profitably, that your overhead is so high that if you've only got 4 GPs or 3 GP full-time equivalents, you just don't make any money. The profit doesn't appear until you've got 5 full-time GPs. Now, what are we short of? We're short of GPs. Very short on GPs. And this is going to be a problem. This is literally going to be a significant problem. Why? Well, on one hand, we've got older GPs, of which there are a significant amount because of the baby boomers. They make up a big demographic, and they've had enough. They're like, you know what? This is getting too hard. I'm out. They don't need the money. They don't need to do the work. If the work's not enjoyable and they're not getting enough out of it, they can say, enough. I'm out. And on the other side, we've got less medical students coming through to select general practice. I mean, there are 2 fields that are going to be pretty difficult in the coming years. One, general practice. Why? Because it's just poorly funded. 2, emergency. Why? Because when general practice doesn't work, there is nowhere else to go but for patients to go to emergency. And so all of the overflow patients end up in emergency. Now, what's the cost of this? The cost overall is a great increase in the overall health budget, the amount of money it takes. Why? Because people aren't dealing with their health conditions preventatively. They are dealing with them when they have become significant. I remember in Ireland, I was working in ED, and this gentleman walked in with a shoe on his foot, and he had a morbid fear of hospitals, and it had to get so bad for him to overcome that fear that he had had a gangrenous foot for 3 months. A gangrenous foot for 3 months. Now, in a good health system, that would never have happened. That operation never would have got to been done. Why? Because it would have been dealt with at a GP level. The cost of the operation, the cost of him being in the hospital bed, the cost of it massively higher compared to funding general practice. But for years, Australia has chosen not to do this, in contradiction to every other country that's like, oh, healthcare, we need to invest. Why? Because if you've got sick people, they can't work, they don't earn money, the taxation goes down, the burden on society goes up. We are going to be faced with people unable to get healthcare, and they're going to be unhappy. Why? Well, they're expecting healthcare. They're like, hey, you promised us healthcare. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't work. You see, if the business is not profitable, it goes bankrupt and it ceases to exist. And that's what we're seeing. And we're probably, at this point, transitioning from a gradual decline to a sudden decline. It's like, whoa, what happened? What happened? Well, you underfunded general practice for the last 20 years. What did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen? Is it really that hard to see that if general practice is difficult, complex, bureaucratic nightmare, doesn't pay well, that you're going to have GPs going, yep, that's the one. I'm going to give up my role, my chance of being an anaesthetist, or a radiologist, or an ophthalmologist, or a dermatologist, or even a surgeon, or a physician, or an interventional cardiologist. All of these things, nope, I'm going to choose this bureaucratic nightmare that doesn't pay well, that's really hard. Okay, but you're going to pay. If you don't pay general practice, you're going to pay over in tertiary care. So we'll see how it plays out. Just don't be surprised if we find it rather hard to get in to see GPs.